bread in circuses, it's a crime, you know? Or Archbishop Oscar Romero. You know, I mean, these are people that folks ought to know who they are. You know, they deserve to be famous.
You hear about the Texas School Board removing Oscar Romero from the textbooks because he's not famous enough.
Oh, God. Oh, well, their bias is obvious, you know. They want a certain kind of world. They want a world that looks like some 1950s sitcom, and they can't have that if people like Cesar Chavez and Archbishop Oscar Romero are famous. You know, how can you have real life befit Ozzie and Harriet when you have to explain to your kids that the CIA sent a death squad to go kill a pacifist priest in El Salvador? It's kind of hard to reconcile that contradiction, you know, because of course this is supposed to be the land of the free and the home of the brave, and et cetera, and it's hard to sell that. It's hard to sell that if I mean, as Stephen Colbert once said at a roast of W's, reality has a known liberal bias. The truth is kind of like a dead body in a pool or in a water, in an ocean. It will bob to the surface. It will rise. I mean, it's not the sort you can push an inflatable ball down to the bottom of the ocean, but it's always going to bob back up. And so that's exactly the case with the censoring of those school books. They are trying to push that ball, they're trying to push something that is naturally buoyant down past any sight of the people. I mean, try as you might to try and force something that's buoyant down to the bottom of the ocean, at some point it's going to bob back up for all to see. And so that's what you have right now, is this attempt to try and whitewash reality. It's not going to work. Eventually, the truth will come out.
If you could add 3 people to the history textbooks, who would they be who aren't in it now?
Oh, God. Like, don't limit me like that, man. Only 3?
Be fine. A lot of stuff has to be covered.
No, like 3 dozen. Oh, God.
Top 3 you think Americans need to know about?
Well, I'd say Paul Robeson would have to be one of them. Paul Robeson, super genius. He was the Denzel Washington of the 1930s and 40s. He knew 24 languages fluently, and he could sing, and he defined the role of Othello for a generation, but he was a commie. And because he was a commie, he got wiped clean from the history books, at least for the most part. There was a Paul Robeson postage stamp not too long ago, so there was that.
They released a lot of his films on the Criterion Collection. Yeah, you know, but he is long overdue for a biopic. I mean, Hollywood should have made a movie based on him a while ago. Okay, since this is an anti-nuclear event, I gotta say Dr. Helen Caldicott. Dr. Helen Caldicott was in charge of the Boston Children's Hospital, if I recall, and her husband said, look, you gotta give up this anti-nuclear activism or I'm gonna divorce you. Well, she told dude to piss off, basically, and the divorce happened, and she, you know, because see, the thing is that she couldn't do both. She couldn't be an anti-nuclear activist full-time and make all the money that she made in charge of this hospital. And so she opted to be a full-time anti-nuclear activist, alienated her husband, he left her, and after the divorce, you know, she devoted her entire life to the cause, and she's still the premier anti-nuclear activist on the planet. She's written several books. They just don't come any smarter than her. One of the things that she pointed out that never occurred to me was that if you're worried about Al-Qaeda, get rid of all nuclear power plants, because all the suicide bomber has to do is walk into a nuclear power plant and go yank, pull, boom, and you've turned, even with just a conventional bomb, you've turned a nuclear power plant into one of these suckers here, into a big giant nuke.
But wouldn't the terrorists have the problem of getting into the reactor of the power plants?
All they gotta do is just find someone on the inside, bribe them. You know, it could happen. I don't know what the odds are, but it could still happen. You know, the point is though, is that she is probably one of the best amongst us. So I guess that'd be number 2. Robeson, Paul Robeson,
and Dr. Helen Caldecott. Number 3, oh man, why gotta be limited to 3?
The last one, make it good.
Because you only got 1 minute.
Yeah.
Oh shoot. Archbishop Oscar Romero. Because this is a guy that more than anybody symbolizes American foreign policy. This is a guy that was basically a Latino version of Dr. King. This was someone that was actually against activism. He was against protest. He was right of center. He was a moderate conservative going into it. And then after spending about a few months in El Salvador and seeing the effect that the CIA has had on El Salvador, he swung left hard. Next thing you know, he's got...
We can actually cross here.
Either way. Also, too, I guess I could run upstairs and grab some stuff, letters from Howard Zinn, from Noam Chomsky.
Yeah, sure.
You have letters from Noam Chomsky?
Yeah, he was talking about how he was going to read a book of mine, but he didn't have time. And there's a point in the letter when he's saying how there couldn't have been a better recommendation than from his friend Howard Zinn. God, I miss him.
Did he die last month or?
January. He was on vacation, he was swimming, and he had a heart attack.
Was he in his 80s or?
87. He was in Santa Monica. I think he was with his family. The wind is not cooperating today.
I think it's all right. You turn around and walk this way.
He can't hear you.
Out of my bag and shot it straight to the roof of the Walkinsville. I mean, that's like an unduplicatable.
What's that?
About, let me see.
Thank you for recognizing.
About 5 years after that, yeah, about 6 years after that, actually, Zinn wrote me this letter.
You could show the letter to the camera for like while I was talking about it.
Oh, hold it up.
Yeah, hold it up while I was talking about the letter.
All right, so right here is it too loud in here?
No, it's fine.
That's fine. We'll have to put subtitles in it because the audio is bad on this camera.
Let's see. So this is the initial. Are you sure it's not too loud?
I think it's loud. It would make the quality of this camera is pretty low, so it would not any sort of sound does the same exact thing.
All right. Well, this is the initial letter that I got from Howard Zinn, insofar as him endorsing the first novel.
Glad you ain't been in a few days or whatever. Don't be so excited. You back? It's all good.
It's like being trapped in a Tyler Perry special or a really shitty BET sitcom. competing with trivia. So what you see here is the endorsement of my first novel. This is the, what you see here is the quote that appears on the back cover. Part of it appears on the front cover. And about 5 years later, after an incident of police brutality, Zen wrote me this. I sent him a copy of my second book, Battle Never Ending. He said, "Thanks for Battle Never Ending. It has your admirable spurt and, God, I can't, flight of imagination." It's kind of hard to get through his handwriting. "Delightful style. You are an original. And I really liked your in-your-face column in the newspaper. We need boldness." Oh, and then P.S., your quote, "getting busted," end quote. They... Your quote, "getting busted," end quote, story tells it all about, quote, democratic, end quote, America.
Tell you some history. The guy killed Malcolm X, he just got out of prison.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, no.
Yeah, the guy killed Malcolm X, just got out of prison. Yes, Tuesday. Yeah. The guy killed Malcolm X. Malcolm X? Yeah.
The sad thing is that that's about as close as they're going to get to it. Like,
yeah. He just got out, yeah.
So anyway,
He just got out.
yeah, so yeah, this the police brutality incident in Las Vegas happened about a couple of weeks before this point, and that's what he was referring to as far as getting busted. It's the only time I've ever had any dealings with the law at all.
With him?
Dealings with the law.
Oh, I thought you said him. All right.
No. Zen, Zen and I stayed in touch until, let me see, the last time I talked to Howard Zen was, let me see. I was actually asking him to hire me to write one of my customized short stories. He said he'd think about it. That was last year. I can't remember when.
Couldn't you have afforded it?
Oh, well, I mean, I owe him so much anyway. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to press it. So, yeah, that was the last time I talked to him. I was on the phone, and in January, I hear about what happened, Sure it's not too loud?
It's fine.
So yeah, Zen, it's not like I knew him that well, but I emailed you that story about how I first met him, and you want me to?
Yeah, you can.
Okay. All right, so I was looking for someone to endorse my first novel, and I knew that Zen was going to be in town. This was, at the time, I was living in San Francisco, going to San Francisco State. I had just finished the first novel, AD, and I go to this bookstore, and Zen's having a signing for his autobiography, You Can't Remain Neutral on a Moving Train. Or can't be neutral on a moving train.
And this was 95?
This was in late 94. This is like November of 94. It's like very late 94. October, November 94. In the bookstore was Alice Walker. And, trying not to be starstruck, I asked Alice Walker if she would endorse my first book. And then she, in a very stuck-up way, goes, "I don't think so." And I'm like, just staggered, and I'm like trying to save face. I'm trying to back out of it with some degree of honor. And I'm like, "Well, it's because you're very busy, right, Miss Walker?" And then she does like this, I swear. She's Scarlett O'Hara, and she goes, "As a matter of fact, young man, I'm quite busy." Batting her eyes and everything. And I'm like, okay, that tells me all I need to know about you. So then, and she was there. She was there because she was one of Professor Zen's apprentices back when. See, the thing about low-income housing is that it attracts whoever's poor, whoever needs housing, And of course, that usually entails the dregs of society. stereotypes, basically. Folks that belong in some WB sitcom instead of in real life. So anyway, yeah. So, you know, figured I didn't stand a chance. Figured I didn't stand a chance to help Alice Walker. Moved on to Professor Zen, who I was coming to see anyway. Professor Zen was in the middle of a lecture, and at the time, I mean, Oliver Stone's JFK had been out for a couple of years, but the subject came up in conversation. He was talking about how too much had been made a big deal of insofar as JFK being in a position to, not being in a position, sorry, he was in a position to end the Vietnam. Go upstairs and smoke some crack. Anyway, what was I saying? Oh, so Professor Zen was agreeing with Professor Chomsky, who at the time was saying how too much of a big deal was made out of, you know, JFK being, you know, assassinated because of his willingness to pull out of Vietnam. And at that point, I just had to step in and say, Professor, we all know that JFK was just another imperialist. You know, you don't have to sell us on that. But you do have to admit that bullets do not zigzag in midair. The laws of physics dictate that much. And as a historian that's concerned with accuracy, you ought to care about, you know, that so many folks still are stupid enough to think that JFK could have pulled, that Lee Harvey Oswald could have pulled this off, you know. I mean, the only way he could have would have been as if he was Bullseye from Daredevil, if he had superhuman aim or something, you know, and everyone froze. And I remember at the time I was looking at Alice Walker and she was like, just looking all aghast, like, oh, how dare I say such a thing. But then Professor Zen broke the silence and said, you got a point. And that's how he and I got to be friends, you know. I mean, during the actual signing after the lecture, he gave me his number and we started talking, and then that's how that came about. And yeah, that's how I got him to endorse my first book. And then he endorsed my most recent book, which hasn't come out yet.
Can you talk about your 3 books?
Well, AD is about the Nation of Islam, and it exposes how they are merely the religious right dipped in chocolate. It talks about how the Nation of Islam has not only a completely right-wing platform, but they have cut deals with the Nazis and the KKK. Elijah Muhammad dealt with George Lincoln Rockwell from the American Neo-Nazi Party. Elijah Muhammad also sent Malcolm X to deal with the KKK down south. Malcolm X brought this up during one of his last speeches. He actually brought it up a week before he got shot. And so the book talks about, well, what would happen if the same corporations that funded the Nazis back in the 30s funded the Nation of Islam and got them the all-black separate state that they claimed would be so beneficial. And it shows, you know, albeit in a future fictitious way, you know, how an all-black separate state run by Farrakhan would be a totalitarian nightmare. The book then goes on to show that one of its residents, a character named Elijah Isaiah, who would be revealed later to be the son of Black Panther Bobby Rush, Fred Hampton Rush. Fred Hampton Rush is kind of like the Afrocentric Winston Smith from Orwell's 1984, except instead of getting tortured, he is frozen by a black version of Joseph Mengele, and he is put in suspended animation. When he is defrosted, it is the 25th century, and the revolution has happened. Everything is made out of hemp. Civil liberties are taken seriously, and Amnesty International is obsolete because human rights are, you know, an assumed given. So that's the first book. Second book, Battle Never Ending, endorsed by civil rights legend Dick Gregory. 3 short stories and 4 poems. The guy on the front cover is the guy that I dress as when I go to protest. And initially the outfit was to promote the book, but it just kind of evolved into something that, you know, became a form of activism. And then the third book hasn't come out yet. It's about first of all, it exposes the white supremacy of Las Vegas, which is, you know, very strong. In fact, there's a white people's party in Las Vegas right now. And
is that what it's called? Or?
The White People's Party. It's actually called the White People's Party. I could actually run upstairs and bring that news story down. Maybe I should. Yeah, okay, hold on.
Thank you.
So this here is the initial letter that Howard Zinn sent me, and here you see the quote that is on the back cover of my first novel. This is his endorsement of it, and then about 5 years later is a handwritten letter where he makes reference to an instance of police brutality. On the bottom where it says, P.S. You're getting busted, quote unquote, story tells it all about, quote, democratic, end quote, America. What happened was there were two police horses blocking the sidewalk in Las Vegas, and I tried to walk in between them. And this white woman cop who evidently watched The Black Beauty or Anna Green Gables one time too many cared more about the horses than she cared about a human being. So she just went off. How dare I walk in between or walk anywhere near her precious horses? And so, you know, I didn't want to, but I figured the only option they left me was to jaywalk. So I walked around the horses in the middle of traffic, you know, all because they didn't have enough sense to make the horse side trot out of the way. And it should have occurred to them that they had no business blocking a public sidewalk anyway. You know, there was plenty of space for the horse. It didn't have to, both horses didn't have to be on the sidewalk. So anyway, as I was jaywalking, I said to the female cop, don't forget who's the public and who's the public servant. And then I hear her tell her male partner, that's it, go get him, you know. And then as I'm walking back onto the sidewalk, behind and around the horses that had been blocking the sidewalk, I feel this in here, yank and pull, and next thing I know, I'm being double teamed by two cops, and then I get busted for the most obscure of charges, quote, interference with a police animal, end quote. Yeah, even though I never touched the horses. So anyway, I spent maybe 8 hours in jail, and that was the only time in my life I had ever been in jail. So anyway, that's what Professor Zinn was referring to when he says, P.S. Your, quote, getting busted, end quote, story tells it all about, quote, democratic, end quote, America. But earlier in the letter, he points out how I really liked your in-your-face column in the newspaper, we need boldness, you know. And so that to me is very important. You know, here is the most respected historian in the history of the left wing, you know, saying that, you know, it's good to be in your face and it's good to be bold. Because right now the consensus is, oh, we must be subtle and we must be gentle because we don't want to alienate any potential recruits, you know. But the left-wingers that are saying this are suffering from a major conflict of interest because they are related to the very teabaggers that we're supposed to be fighting against. So, of course, they're going to be holding back. In Return of the Jedi, Luke Skywalker finds out that Darth Vader is his father, or more to the point, he has it confirmed, and then he says, well, maybe we shouldn't kill Vader, maybe we should, you know, try and deal with him. And in the story, in the context of the story, that's a good thing. You know, Luke is proven right, Obi-Wan and Yoda are proven wrong, and that it turned out to be, you know, possible to redeem Vader. But that's fiction. In real life, no, you can't deal with these teabaggers. And yet, unfortunately, you have groups like Code Pink trying to offer olive branches to them, you know? And anyone in resistance knows that the minute an occupying power starts to negotiate with a terrorist, that means that the terrorist has already won. So I'm very afraid that, you know, the left, the white left that is all too used to, you know, tiptoeing around the supposedly fragile feelings of their right-wing relatives, I'm afraid that they're engaged in premature surrender, you know, as if we don't outnumber them. You know, there are 60 million registered Republicans in a country of 300 million. We outnumber them 4 to 1. So you were talking about my latest novel. Right here is a newspaper, the Las Vegas Review-Journal, July 21st, 2005. Las Vegas Review-Journal, July 21st, 2005. White People's Party formed. A Las Vegas-based white separatist organization has filed paperwork with the Secretary of State's office to create a white people's party with the immediate goals of ending affirmative action and illegal immigration. But here's the key. A search of the internet turned up no evidence of any other state where a minor party with ballot access has an explicit white separatist platform. Not Mississippi, not Alabama, Nevada. So, I mean, that in that atmosphere, you know, and given my taste in women, you know, it was a very bad mix. I mean, flyers like this can be found on any street corner in Las Vegas, you know, where it's basically a parody of Earth Day, but instead of it being the spotted owl that you're supposed to be concerned with, you're supposed to be concerned with the fact that only white can make white, and that the result of a black man and a white woman is going to look like Obama and not like Brad Pitt, and you know, as a result, the white supremacists are going to feel like they're going to be gobbled up, assimilated like the Star Trek Borg characters, you know, because of course a human can't turn a Borg into a human, but a Borg can turn a human into a Borg. Or the same way with a vampire. A human can't turn a vampire into a human, but a vampire can turn a human into a vampire. And so there's this fear of being, you know, consumed.
Could you actually read that out loud? So.
Oh, the whole flyer?
Yeah.
Let's see.
That's very creepy, actually.
How can we possibly celebrate this on? How can we possibly celebrate on this Earth Day? In 1900, persons of European ancestry made up 1/3, 30% of the world's population. Today, a century later, whites make up less than 8% of the world's population, and white females of childbearing age or lower have dwindled to less than 2% of the total. Every day, the white percentage of the world's population decreases. Who is the real minority? If you're concerned about the future, the snail darter or the spotted owl, or about saving the whale, say hello to Earth's most endangered species, the white race. And then it says the National Alliance, P.O. Box, and then their phone number and a couple of websites, you know. And so in this atmosphere, it made it very hard for someone with my taste in women to find true love. And so this is a proposed mock-up for the cover. This is me with my ex, and she wasn't my type. She was great, good person, but she wasn't my type. And the only reason why I was with her is to stave off loneliness, because my type was out of reach because of this and this. Hence the subject of, you know, my latest book. I could get online. I've actually emailed you what Zinn said about my latest book. I'll email it again. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, basically, you know, it was as glowing a recommendation as, you know, the one that he wrote for AD. And yeah, so, you know, the book chronicles a protagonist that is based on me. And it has him in Las Vegas, the same time I was in Las Vegas, and he deals with the dating scene. He deals with, you know, it's very complicated. It's hard to sum up in a 30-second soundbite, but you know, in Las Vegas, the white supremacy is not in your face. You know, it's covert. It's everywhere and nowhere at the same time. You'll have flyers like this all over the place, and while the white women in Las Vegas would die before they'll ever admit this, you know, they are afraid that because of this, if they had seen with a black man, something might happen to them, or they might suffer some loss at some point down the road. It's basically cowardice on their part. Not so much that they themselves are members of the KKK, but, you know, given that this culture is promoting Barbie instead of Xena, they are simply not raised with the strength necessary in order to have the courage to stand up to any white supremacists that might have a problem with them, you know, walking down the street with a black man. And so, you know, this is what the character faces in the book. Some other things that I've collected when I was down there, let's see here.
How long did you live down there?
1999 to 2006. And let's see, one of the things about Las Vegas is everyone assumes that prostitution is legal down there. It's not. In order for actual prostitution, you have to go to a place called Pahrump, which is dozens of miles away. But what they do have in Las Vegas is what they call escort services. And they put out ads. Now, white supremacists sometimes take these ads and write graffiti on them as such. If you believe in racial equality for Afro, Zulu, nigger animals, or illegal taco Latino wetbacks, then why not take one home for mom, daughter, or sister, question mark, question mark, question mark. And so the implication is clear that, you know, you're supposed to, you know, if you're a white guy and you see this ad, you're supposed to be, you know, inclined to, you know, be so influenced by this that you're gonna, you know, you're not gonna, it's not gonna occur to you to be with anyone other than the blonde that you see in the picture. I've seen this again here, and it's clear that it's the same person because you can tell from the identical handwriting. Who needs Zulu welfare food stamp niggers and illegal taco Latino wetback trash? And then the end of the question is, of course, who needs them when you've got the hot blonde hair? So again, of course, this is promoting white supremacy. Picture of my ex, and then this one, it just comes right out with it, where they just, you know, flat out says who needs niggas on this, you know, escort ad here. And then there's this. If you look real close, you can see on the Poison ad, and I found this on a bus stop. On the Poison ad, you know, you can see the word nigger on top of the Poison ad. And then on this sticker, vote. This is 2004, of course, because it makes mention of John Kerry. Vote Senator John Kerry, Interracial Gay Cocksuckers of America Association. So again, you know, they're trying to titillate the ignorant. They figure, well, you know, by making some supposed affront to masculinity, that supposedly some white guy out there is going to read this and think, oh, well, I'm not a fag. I'm going to prove that I'm not a fag. I'm going to go spit out a bunch of white babies and make the KKK proud. You know, that's what they're hoping for. And then, of course, this is probably one of the most overt ones. Martin Luther King, Afro-Zulu, kink head, black bastard, communist animal, and animal is underlined, got what he needed only 20 years too late. And so, you know, notice how the word animal is underlined to try and further drive home the notion that, well, if you're engaged in a so-called interracial relationship, if you're engaged in a so-called interracial relationship, you're engaged with someone less than human. You know, I mean, the differences between us are not biological, it's cultural. You know, like for instance, the culture that I was raised on comprised of comic book superheroes and cartoons and Saturday morning and such. And then the culture that all too many blacks are raised on comprised of thug, bling bling, gangster rap videos and loud, shitty BET sitcoms. So, you know, is it any wonder why, you know, you have the problems that you have? Because, I mean, I hate to say that Bill Cosby had a point, but he does, in the sense that when you have bad role models, it leads to bad behavior. And the bad behavior gets exaggerated, you know, overrated. Whereas in contrast, when, you know, the blacks are out there doing what ought to be done, people like Aaron Magruder, people like Aaron Dixon, and so forth, it doesn't get as hyped in the media as it ought to. So, I mean, my God, you know, if I imagine if I was white and I saw 50 Cent or, you know, Monique on TV, and if that's my only impression of black people, I'd probably be afraid of him too, you know. So yeah, you know, it's a struggle. It's a struggle. It's all about getting the right things famous, getting the right things popular.
Here's a textbook example of what I mean. John Singleton, the director of Boys in the Hood, he has a choice right now. Right now he's contemplating doing a movie based on a Marvel Comics character, but he's trying to decide which one. He has a choice. The Black Panther, a character that is a super genius, an intellectual, someone cultured, someone dignified, someone that is a ruler of a fictitious African country, Wakanda. That character is pretty much considered to be the first modern black superhero. And then the other choice is Luke Cage. Those who know Marvel Comics know that Luke Cage is a thug, a con in the penitentiary, framed for a crime he didn't commit, and part of some prison experiment. When he became part of a prison experiment, he came out of it with bulletproof skin. All right, so
what is his superhero name?
Power Man, Luke Cage, Power Man, yeah. So, you know, John Singleton has this choice. He can either do the super genius, ruler of an African kingdom, that would bring dignity to the screen, or he could put out yet another spiel about another ignorant thug.
Hold on, I need to change the tape real